Ever wondered which deaths have been the most scrutinized in human history? Could some famous figures have met their end through foul play rather than natural causes? What secrets lie buried alongside history's most notable personalities? Number 5. Princess Diana. Was it truly just a tragic accident? Did the flashing cameras of paparazzi really cause the fatal crash that took the life of the people's princess? On August 31, 1997, the world stood still as news broke that Princess Diana had died in a car crash in Paris's Pont de l'Alma tunnel. The Mercedes carrying Diana and her companion Dodi Fayed crashed while apparently trying to escape pursuing paparazzi. The driver, Henry Paul and Fayed, died at the scene, while Diana succumbed to her injuries at a hospital hours later. What seemed initially like a straightforward, albeit tragic, car accident quickly became one of history's most investigated deaths. The French police investigation concluded that Paul, who was found to have high levels of alcohol and prescription drugs in his system, lost control of the vehicle while driving at high speed to evade photographers. But this explanation never satisfied everyone. Dodi's father, Mohammed Al-Fayed, was particularly vocal about his suspicions. He claimed that the British royal family couldn't bear the thought of Diana, the mother of the future king, being in a relationship with his Egyptian Muslim son. Al-Fayed alleged that the crash was orchestrated by British intelligence services on the orders of Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. These claims led to Operation Paget, a metropolitan police inquiry that cost nearly £4 million and produced a report over 800 pages long. The investigation examined numerous conspiracy theories but ultimately supported the original conclusion of an accident caused by a speeding driver who had been drinking. In 2008, an inquest jury returned a verdict of unlawful killing through the grossly negligent driving of both Paul and the paparazzi. Yet the conspiracy theories never fully died. People pointed to Diana's own fearful predictions about being killed in a staged accident. Others questioned why CCTV cameras along the route seemingly failed that night, or why it took so long to get Diana to a hospital. The white Fiat Uno that reportedly collided with Diana's Mercedes before the crash was never conclusively identified, despite extensive searches. Witnesses reported seeing a bright flash in the tunnel just before the crash, feeding theories about intentional disorientation of the driver. Even the medical response raised questions. Why was Diana initially stabilized at the scene rather than being rushed to the hospital? Some medical experts have suggested that with faster hospital transport, her life might have been saved. Diana's death represents the intersection of celebrity, royalty, and tragedy. Her massive global popularity, combined with her complicated relationship with the royal family and the press, created fertile ground for suspicion and doubt. Every new revelation or testimony keeps the investigation alive in public consciousness, making Diana's death one of the most continuously scrutinized in modern history. Number 4. John F. Kennedy. Did Lee Harvey Oswald act alone? Was there a second shooter on the grassy knoll? How could a single bullet cause so much damage to two different people? November 22, 1963 started as a bright, hopeful day in Dallas, Texas, as President John F. Kennedy and First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy rode through downtown in an open-top limousine. By 12:30 p.m., the day had turned into one of America's darkest moments. Shots rang out as the presidential motorcade passed through Dealey Plaza. Kennedy was struck twice and pronounced dead at Parkland Memorial Hospital at 1 p.m. The official investigation, known as the Warren Commission, concluded in 1964 that Lee Harvey Oswald, a former Marine with Soviet sympathies, acted alone in assassinating Kennedy from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository. They also determined that Jack Ruby, who shot Oswald on live television 2 days after Kennedy's assassination, had no connection to Oswald or any broader conspiracy. But Americans were skeptical from the start. The single bullet theory, or magic bullet theory, became a focal point of doubt. The Warren Commission asserted that one bullet passed through Kennedy's neck, then struck Texas Governor John Connally, who was seated in front of Kennedy, causing all of Connally's wounds. Critics found this trajectory implausible, suggesting it required the bullet to change direction multiple times. Then there were the witnesses who reported hearing shots from the grassy knoll area in front of and to the right of the motorcade, not from the book depository behind it. The famous Zapruder film showing Kennedy's head jerking backward upon impact seemed to contradict the official narrative of shots coming solely from behind. The House Select Committee on Assassinations reinvestigated in the late 1970s and reached a startling conclusion that differed from the Warren Commission. While Oswald had indeed fired shots at Kennedy, there was a high probability that a second shooter had fired from the grassy knoll, based on acoustic evidence from a police motorcycle radio. They concluded that Kennedy was probably assassinated as the result of a conspiracy. However, subsequent scientific analysis questioned the validity of this acoustic evidence. Meanwhile, the list of potential conspirators suggested by various researchers reads like a who's who of 1960s power brokers and enemies. The CIA, FBI, Soviet Union, Cuba, the Mafia, Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson, and even defense contractors allegedly unhappy with Kennedy's policies. The investigation has been complicated by the government's own secrecy. Documents related to the assassination remained classified for decades. Even when the 1992 JFK Records Act mandated their release, some files were held back for national security reasons, fueling suspicion. In 2017 and 2018, thousands of previously withheld documents were released, though some remained partially redacted. Physical evidence has also been controversial. Kennedy's brain, which could have provided crucial ballistic evidence, went missing from the National Archives. The limousine was quickly cleaned and refurbished, destroying potential evidence. Even the handling of Kennedy's autopsy has been criticized by forensic experts. Every anniversary of the assassination brings renewed interest and often new theories or evidence. The Kennedy assassination investigation has spawned an entire subculture of researchers, complete with its own literature, conferences, and passionate debates. It represents America's loss of innocence in many ways, the moment when trust in official narratives began to erode significantly. Number 3. Marilyn Monroe. Was it really suicide? Could it have been an accidental overdose? Or was the blonde bombshell silenced because she knew too much? When Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her Brentwood home on August 5, 1962, the official cause was listed as probable suicide by barbiturate overdose. The 36-year-old actress born Norma Jean Mortensen had a history of mental health struggles and substance abuse. Case closed, far from it. The circumstances surrounding Monroe's death have been a source of speculation and investigation for decades. The timeline itself raises questions. Her housekeeper, Eunice Murray, noticed Monroe's bedroom lights still on at 3 a.m. but waited until 3:30 a.m. to call Monroe's psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, rather than emergency services. Greenson arrived and supposedly broke into Monroe's room through a window, despite the door being unlocked, and found her unresponsive. The police weren't called until 4:25 a.m., nearly an hour after Monroe was discovered. When they arrived, they found the scene had been disturbed. Murray was washing sheets, and reports later emerged that Monroe's diary and personal notes were missing. The delay gave rise to theories that evidence was being removed or altered. The autopsy findings were equally puzzling. No pills were found in Monroe's stomach, which is unusual in suicide by oral medication. The toxicology report showed extremely high levels of barbiturates in her bloodstream, so high that some experts suggested she would have had to have been injected or administered the drugs rectally to reach such concentrations without pill residue in her stomach. Monroe's connections to powerful men have fueled some of the most enduring conspiracy theories. Her relationships with President John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert F. Kennedy have been well documented. Some theories suggest she was murdered to prevent her from going public about these affairs or about classified information the Kennedys might have shared with her. Former Los Angeles County Prosecutor John Miner, who was present at Monroe's autopsy, claimed he had heard taped recordings Monroe made for her psychiatrist shortly before her death. According to Miner, these tapes indicated Monroe was planning new film projects and a remarriage, hardly the thoughts of someone contemplating suicide. In 1982, the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office reopened the investigation into Monroe's death but found insufficient evidence to change the original ruling. The review did, however, acknowledge serious flaws in the original death investigation. Witnesses have come forward over the years with conflicting accounts. Some neighbors reported seeing an ambulance at Monroe's house earlier in the evening, suggesting she may have been alive and under medical care hours before the official discovery of her body. Former ambulance attendant James Hall claimed in a 2015 book that he had been called to Monroe's house and found her alive but in distress, only to be ordered to leave by men in suits who had arrived at the scene. The FBI files on Monroe, partially declassified in the 2000s, revealed that the agency had monitored her activities due to her associations with suspected communists and her vocal opposition to nuclear weapons testing. These files contained numerous redactions, leading some to speculate about what remains hidden. Even Monroe's personal life adds complexity to the investigation. Her house had recently been bugged, likely by private detectives hired by Fox Studios who were concerned about production delays on her final, unfinished film, Something's Got to Give. The question remains, did these surveillance devices capture evidence related to her death? Monroe's death investigation symbolizes how celebrity, politics, and mystery can intertwine to create an enduring puzzle. Despite being one of the most photographed women in the world, the true circumstances of her final moments remain obscured, ensuring that investigations and theories continue to emerge even decades after her passing. Number 2. Tutankhamun. Was the boy king murdered? Did he die from disease or accident? Could the supposed curse that killed many who entered his tomb be explained by science? When British archaeologist Howard Carter broke through to Tutankhamun's tomb in Egypt's Valley of the Kings in 1922, he uncovered not only spectacular treasures but also one of history's most enduring mysteries. The young pharaoh, who ruled Egypt around 1332 to 1323 BCE, died unexpectedly at approximately 19 years of age. His hurried burial and the subsequent efforts to erase him from history raised immediate questions about his demise. The investigation into Tutankhamun's death spans nearly a century and represents one of archaeology's longest-running cold cases. Unlike modern deaths, the investigators have had to rely on a mummified body, fragmented historical records, and advanced scientific techniques that weren't even imaginable when the body was first discovered. The 10th rays of the mummy in 1968 revealed what appeared to be a blow to the back of the skull, fueling theories that the young king was murdered. Suspects included his vizier Ai, who succeeded him as pharaoh, or his military commander Horemheb, who later took the throne himself. The motive seemed clear: power. The plot thickened when Carter's meticulous records revealed that the body had been damaged during discovery, potentially causing the skull injury after death. The mystery deepened further with the discovery that Tutankhamun had numerous physical ailments. He had a clubfoot, a slightly cleft palate, and evidence of multiple malarial infections. Could natural causes explain his early demise? In 2005, a team of researchers conducted the first ever CT scan on an Egyptian mummy when they examined Tutankhamun. The results overturned the murder theory by showing that the skull damage occurred after death. However, they did find evidence of a broken leg shortly before death, with signs of infection. This led to a new theory: Tutankhamun died from complications of a broken femur, possibly sustained in a chariot accident. DNA analysis conducted in 2010 added another dimension to the investigation. The tests revealed that Tutankhamun's parents were siblings, explaining his physical ailments as results of inbreeding. They also confirmed multiple infections, including malaria. Some researchers now propose that a combination of genetic weaknesses and disease caused his death. The investigation took yet another turn when chemical analysis of Tutankhamun's remains in 2013 suggested that his body had spontaneously combusted inside the coffin due to a botched mummification process. The embalmers had apparently used excessive amounts of oils that, combined with oxygen and linen wrappings, created a chemical reaction generating enough heat to partially cook the body. Even the famous Curse of Tutankhamun, which allegedly caused the deaths of several people associated with the tomb's discovery, has been investigated scientifically. Researchers have suggested that ancient mold spores or bacteria in the tomb could have caused respiratory ailments in those who entered, potentially explaining some of the deaths that contributed to the curse legend. The political context of Tutankhamun's reign has been scrutinized as well. He came to power following the controversial reign of Akhenaten, who had upended Egyptian religion by promoting worship of a single deity. As the boy king who restored the traditional gods, Tutankhamun would have faced political pressures from various factions. Could these tensions have played a role in his demise? Archaeological investigations continue to yield new information. Recent analysis of Tutankhamun's personal possessions, including a dagger made of meteoritic iron, has provided insights into his life and times that help contextualize the circumstances of his death. The investigation into Tutankhamun's death demonstrates how advances in technology can shed new light on ancient mysteries. With each new scientific technique applied to his remains or artifacts, another layer of this archaeological onion is peeled away, bringing us closer to understanding the fate of a young ruler who has become more famous in death than he ever was in life. Number 1. Abraham Lincoln. How did John Wilkes Booth manage to access the presidential box so easily? Was the assassination truly the work of a conspiracy? Could the president have been saved with modern medical treatment? Sic semper tyrannis, thus always to tyrants. These were the words John Wilkes Booth allegedly shouted after shooting President Abraham Lincoln at Ford's Theater on April 14, 1865. The president died the following morning, becoming the first American president to be assassinated. The basic facts seemed straightforward. Booth, a Confederate sympathizer, shot Lincoln and was later killed while fleeing. But the full story and investigation would prove far more complex. The immediate investigation focused on Booth's co-conspirators. It quickly became apparent that the assassination was part of a larger plot. That same night, Lewis Powell attacked Secretary of State William Seward in his home, seriously wounding him. George Atzerodt, tasked with killing Vice President Andrew Johnson, lost his nerve and got drunk instead. The coordinated nature of these attacks pointed to a conspiracy rather than the action of a lone gunman. 8 conspirators were eventually tried by a military commission. 4 were hanged, including Mary Surratt, who owned the boarding house where the conspirators met. 3 received life sentences, and 1 was given a 6-year sentence. But questions lingered about whether the full extent of the conspiracy had been uncovered. Security failings became a major focus of the investigation. Lincoln's bodyguard, John Frederick Parker, had abandoned his post outside the presidential box to watch the play and then left during intermission to go drinking at a nearby tavern. How could such a lapse occur during a time of such tension, just days after the Civil War had effectively ended? Some have suggested this wasn't mere negligence but deliberate. The role of Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton, raised suspicions. He took control of the investigation immediately and was at Lincoln's bedside throughout the night. Some conspiracy theories have suggested Stanton's involvement, noting that he had disagreed with Lincoln's lenient approach to the defeated South. Historians have largely dismissed these theories, pointing to Stanton's genuine distress and his effective management of the crisis. The investigation was complicated by the manhunt for Booth, who managed to escape Washington despite a broken leg sustained when he jumped from the presidential box to the stage after shooting Lincoln. He remained at large for 12 days before being cornered in a Virginia tobacco barn. The barn was set afire and Booth was shot, dying hours later. Some have questioned whether the man killed was actually Booth, though DNA testing of Booth family remains has largely put this theory to rest. Medical aspects of the assassination have been intensely scrutinized. Lincoln was shot in the back of the head with a single .44 caliber bullet from a Derringer pistol. The bullet traversed his brain and lodged behind his right eye. By modern standards, the medical care Lincoln received was primitive. Doctors repeatedly probed the wound with unsterilized fingers and instruments. Some medical historians believe Lincoln might have survived with modern trauma care, while others maintain the wound was inherently fatal. The investigation into broader conspiracy theories continued long after the initial trials. Was the Confederate leadership involved? Documents suggest that while earlier plots to kidnap Lincoln may have had official sanction, Jefferson Davis and other Confederate leaders likely did not approve the assassination. Nevertheless, the U.S. government offered a $100,000 reward for Davis in connection with the assassination, though he was never tried for it. Another line of investigation focused on Booth's movements and connections in the months leading up to the assassination. He had traveled to Canada, where Confederate agents operated, and had made multiple visits to the Surratt boarding house. He had also been in contact with Dr. Samuel Mudd, who later set Booth's broken leg. The extent of these various parties' knowledge of Booth's plans has been debated by historians. The military trial of the conspirators itself later came under scrutiny. The decision to try civilians in a military court was constitutionally questionable. The Supreme Court ruled in Ex parte Milligan in 1866 that military trials for civilians were unconstitutional when civilian courts were functioning. This raised questions about whether justice was properly served. Lincoln's assassination occurred at a pivotal moment in American history, as the nation struggled with how to reunite after 4 years of brutal civil war. The president's death fundamentally altered the course of Reconstruction and possibly American race relations for generations. This historical significance ensures that investigations and re-examinations of every aspect of the assassination continue to this day. Could there still be undiscovered documents or evidence that might shed new light on one of America's most traumatic moments? What other secrets might be hidden in the archives or passed down through generations of families connected to this historic tragedy?